Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thank you as always for tuning back in. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Leila, the Lenormand reader, and I focus almost exclusively on the amazing Lenormand practice. Be sure to check out all the links that I have in the description box for you and download some free resources so that you can master this amazing deck. Today I am doing a new deck review. I have done several deck reviews before. They are on my forecast channel. As you might know, this channel is my new tutorial channel, and I didn't move the tutorial videos and the deck reviews from my forecast channel onto here, although I might in the future. So this is a new deck review, and this is quite a special deck because it is coming from India. So this deck is by Zennobiia, Navil, Edulkaka, and she goes by Zenn for short, and her Lenormand deck is called Zenn Simply Lenormand. Her symbol is the horseshoe facing up, and we'll see this in her guidebook as well. So I was really delighted to hear from Zenn reaching out to me to review her deck, because I started to pick up from people joining my email list that there is a growing interest in Lenormand out of India. So I am really excited about this, and I'm really excited that it is traveling beyond our usual Europe, North America areas into the East and the continent towards India. So this is Zenn's deck. I have to say that the color scheme of her deck, the green, the light green, is really peaceful and calming. Like it feels like an easy deck, and you'll see with the images that it feels like an easy deck to connect with. The box is a hard box, carton hard box. I think one of the most ideal boxes. Other boxes are like that as well. The Rana George, the Maybe Lenormand as well. They have this magnetic line here that closes onto the box, and the box itself is hard and it packs everything. It can sit, it can sort of stand, so it's one of the most ideal formats for a Lenormand deck, and I would say any deck as well. Let's look at the back a little bit before we open it. So there's Zenn's website. I will link it as well, and just a bit of information here about what's inside. So let's go right ahead and open this lovely box. So we've got Zenn's business card. What's really interesting about Zenn's work is that she is an educational consultant as well as a numerologist, and she focuses on children with learning difficulties. And if you visit her website, you will find that she combines all of these different skills in this way that is really interesting. I have to say, I've had some people on the course, on the master programs, go off and do some really amazing things with the Lenormand deck. I have someone who is implementing the deck for specifically spiritual purposes, and someone else who is looking at implementing the deck in art, and I mean fine arts. So it's really fascinating the things that people come up with and what they end up doing with this deck. So I really encourage you to visit Zenn's website, because you will see how she offers these different services in terms of numerology, helping children with difficulties through different modalities, and also offering Lenormand readings and trainings. So it's a really fascinating combination of things. I have to say, Zenn, I am totally on board with you. I absolutely love numerology. I will be bringing it into the fold of my forecast channel and my tutorials at some point. So this is a really fascinating combination of skills that Zenn brings together. And so Zenn is apparently the first person out of India to create a deck locally. So that is really exciting. We've got the guidebook, and this is a properly printed little booklet here. It's not one of those paper ones, all like from cover to cover. It does have a bit of a cover here, a soft one, and so it's quite well put together. It holds really well. And we've got the deck. The deck is very colorful, and I really like the images. I could use such a deck on the channel because the images stand out. It can be a bit tricky sometimes finding a good deck for the channel where there is a combination of colors and you know, the proper size, you know, of the symbol on each card, so that it stands out well on the camera. So this is the 36 card deck. You see the front is Zenn's logo, and I personally have a preference for when the back of the card shows whether a card is upright or reversed. In Lenormand, we read the deck upright only. So there's no need for the back to be like one of those that you can't tell if it's upright or reversed. Of course, some authors have read them in reverse, and that's totally fine, but you can do everything with the cards themselves and combinations. Before we get to the usual card by card overview that I like to do on my deck reviews, let's continue looking at what's inside the box. So we have I don't know what you call this, a soft divider here to lift off the deck, and you have a little bag, a little sack here that you can use for the cards, which I think is really convenient, actually, having all of these components for how you want to store the deck and pack the deck away. So I'm going to come back to the guidebook. There are some interesting things I want to go over with you in terms of the card meanings, and also mainly the layout, a really nice layout here that I want to try. But first, let's go ahead and do our card by card review that I like to do. So I didn't shuffle the deck, actually, not yet. And the deck starts at the top with the rider. So actually it's going to be more convenient that we start with the cross, and then when we would have gone through each of them one by one, we would have them in reverse order. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to do it in reverse, starting with the cross. So card 36. So here is the cross, and again, I really like that the illustrations are so clear on a card, along with color. I really love the background here. I think it's all hand painted and then printed. So very good effort here. And here is the anchor. Again, very clear symbols. I certainly like the minimalist approach with Lenormand. This is the fish. Again, nice, large on the card, very visible. And the key is always a favorite card. It's the first time I see it with the, you know, the actual key bit at the top, so that's really interesting. And the moon, also on a night sky, very beautiful indigo color here, very clear. The sun, also quite interestingly, the sun is also on a darker background. Isn't that interesting? So that is the sun. The lily. So the lilies for Zenn, Zenn has them in plural. Many decks have the lilies in plural. Again, very clear. Red is the first time I see them in red, actually. A lot of the time they're in white because lilies are white, but I like the interpretation of the red. And this is the lady. Quite interesting. First time I ever see this. Zenn's lady and man cards they face the back. Their backs are to you. This is so interesting. I think it adds a mystery to them. It is the first time that I see this. Almost every man and woman card I have seen have the person facing you. So that is really fascinating interpretation of the man and woman. We've got the letter, very straightforward here, letter coming out of an envelope, and the book. Nice big brown book. Very clear, again, symbols very clear on the card. The ring, also a big ring on the card, very helpful to see. I think this is a really good deck to use on camera. Very nice big illustrations. And the heart, again, very clear, very interesting colors. You'd have thought it would be the other way around. Some interesting interpretations of the colors and presentation of the card. Again, very clear in the center. The mice. So Zenn has several mice. A lot of decks, I would say most decks, represent the mice as several mice. It is also a card of multiplicity in terms of more than two. The two would be the birds. So again, very clear. The crossroads. So this crossroad here, that is a very common representation. I just go by the road following Titania's interpretation. Very, very clear. The mountain, very interesting that the mountain is green. So it's more of a hill. Most mountains I've seen are a bit colder, whiter, and and no green on the mountains I've come across. So again, interesting interpretations here on the cards. The garden, again, a very clear representation of a garden with some flowers here. You know, the outdoors, the spring element, the blue sky, very clear. The tower, very nice card. I think this might be one of my favorite cards. I really love the red background against the tower. I love the, it gives that impression of dawn or dusk, that beautiful moment here. And with the tower, it has that, I think, that impressive energy, I would say. So that's a nice card. It's almost like you see just the shadow of the tower against this sunset or sunrise. And here is the dog. Again, a very clear card. Straightforward. The stork, also very clear. Stork is often represented as flying, and then it is still. I don't think this affects your interpretations. We'll look at a few interpretations and see how they sort of go with the illustration. We've got the stars. Very common to represent this card as several stars. I think Rana George does that as well with the starry sky. Very beautiful colors here. This blue into the deep sky here, deep night sky. Very beautiful. I think this might be my second favorite card. And this is the bear. Again, very clear, strong, standing bear. Very clear, very immediate to connect with the cards. I also noticed a little bit of an arch here, just decorating the edge. And of course, all throughout, you notice that there was the name of the card written on it. Quite interesting, with a bit of an artistic decor here around the frame. So very clear, very, you know, this might be a really good deck to start off with. You know, you've got the names of the cards, very clear symbols, really thinking about what the symbol means. It could be a really good starter deck, and of course one that you can use throughout. So here's the fox. Again, very clear. I noticed that the animals are almost always in like a field of green. Yeah, so far, yeah, except the fish. I think the fish was in the water. So you can see the fox is like watching something, planning, typical fox behavior. So well captured in here. We've got the child. Again, very interesting. The child is facing away. You know, very interesting. The people cards are facing away, not facing you. This is very unique. I've never seen this in another deck. And very beautiful baby blue here. Lovely cards. So the birds, yeah, as I said, the birds tend to be in pairs, and they are so in Zenn's deck as well. Often the mice represent multiplicity and the birds represent a pair, and other cards would represent one, like the tower. For my part, I like to use the flowers as multiplicity, and I'll take the bird as two as well, even if in my deck there's just one bird on the card. And here is the whip. Again, very clear card. I really like the, you know, how they turn out on camera. They're very clear cards with the frame and the name of the card. The sickle or the scythe, nicely represented on this greenery here, because the scythe is often taken to suggest this concept of reaping. And I want to remember to check this one out in the deck, see how she interprets the scythe, because it's one of those cards that can go in a few ways. And here is the bouquet, or what I call the flowers. You see a bunch of flowers here, straightforward. It doesn't stand out as much from the background, really merges with the background, but all of these flowers here, and obviously the name, very clear cards. Here is the coffin covered with some red drape here. I've seen this in others as well. This, I think it might be the Rana George deck. I think there's a purple drape over the coffin. There are a few authors who like to drape the coffin with, you know, a color, or, you know, I like the purple, the red. They're beautiful. It adds, I think, a bit of character to the coffin. So a very beautiful card here. And the snake, again, very clear, very straightforward. This, I think, is a cobra. Picking up from the Indian landscape, that is really lovely. So the cobra has that a bit of a beautiful kind of decor on the back of it, and then of course when it stands up, you know, it inflates on the sides with its intimidating action. So that is really nicely inspired from the Indian landscape. Very beautiful. And the clouds, so Typically, the clouds have a light and dark side. There, we could read this as the darker side because there are more clouds, and this one as the lighter side. But it is not my impression from the card that this is something that Zenn focuses on. Instead, it's going to depend on the combinations, which is what I do for the most part. But let's remember to look this one up as well. So far we said the scythe and clouds to look at. Possibly, was there something else? I forget, but definitely the clouds and scythe we want to look at in terms of how Zenn interprets them. Here is the tree. Quite fascinating that the tree is yellow, not green. So again, a very original take on the colors in this deck, like really interpreting some colors very differently, and I really appreciate this. So a very beautiful tree branching out, a yellow tree, quite amazing. And the house with a tree in a garden, very clear. Again, these images are very, very clear, very good on camera, I have to say. And we've got the ship. Now the ship is quite an interesting interpretation here. It sails in the night, and the ship merges in color with the rest of the sea and the sky. So I really, when I was going through the deck before starting the video, this card really jumped out, because a lot of ships and a lot of Lenormand cards are not at night, and they're not blue. They tend to be, the sea is blue, but there's a lot of sun, there's a lot of brightness. So this is another really original interpretation of the ship. And the clover, a very beautiful card. I love this card. I think this might be one of my favorites as well. What I love about it is the depth of the green. I love the colors on this clover, all green with yellowish tint on the sides here to stand out, the leaves of the clover, and then a strong green at the center. So I love the green. Really connects with this idea of greenery, which, by the way, is something commonly associated with the clover. Like the clover would advise on eating more greens, going out into a green field, you know, connecting with nature. That sense of green is really associated with the clover, and also the flowers and the tree and the garden. So these are the green cards, if you like. So this one is a very beautiful card for this reading. And the rider is card number 1, the very first card, and also in a lot of green. So lots of green in the deck, lots of greenery, nature, and this landscape. And we've got a rider on the horse. It can't tell if it's a man or a woman, which is quite a nice change, because most of the time the rider on the rider card tends to be a gentleman. So these are some really lovely cards, I have to say, Zenn. I love the green. I love the change, the original take on some colors. They're almost inverted from other decks. A lot of green. So what were the cards that we said we wanted to look into in terms of, yes, the green mountain. The mountain. We said we wanted to look at the mountain because it felt warmer than most mountains on card illustrations. And just having a quick look through here, the lily was interesting. Fabulous. So very, very clear cards, really ideal on camera, I have to say. Let's pull up this guidebook and see what Zenn makes of a few of these interesting cards. So starting with, let's see the clover. So the clover, obviously a lucky card. Good luck, gaiety, lightheartedness, opportunity, and small joys. The idea of the clover being small joys is something that I pick up in several authors, and she suggests 2 days or 2 weeks as a timing, which, by the way, is not the same across other cards. And what I mean by that is that the timing with other cards is not necessarily in reference to the number. So she chooses 2 days or 2 weeks with the clover, but the ship, for example, she suggests it could take weeks or months. So it depends on the card. Comfort through fostering good and wholesome food habits, holistic alternatives, that's for health. So again, as with many authors, there is some correspondences here, or what I call correspondences, which is the idea of interpreting the cards across different context. So she's got timing, so she's got the main keywords, and then she's got timing and health, as well as advice. And of course, you can draw many correspondences. I do 10 in my master guides. The advice of the clover, according to Zenn, is bold is beautiful, but recklessness can wreck you. You know, Zenn, this is really interesting, and I find this is actually really true. In my experience, the clover is not always outright good luck. It can mean that things turn out in unexpected ways, often for the better for the most part, but it is not necessarily good fortune in the way that the sun is. It has that sense of risk and unexpectedness and luck. So I really appreciate that she brings up both the bold is beautiful, but recklessness can wreck you concepts into the same card. And then Zenn offers a couple of combinations. She has the clover and bear, and then she has the bear and clover. So again, there is that sense of directionality, or what I call directionality, which is the idea of cards can have different meanings if they show up in different orders. So these are some really helpful summarized meanings of the cards. And like I was saying earlier, it sounds like a really good starter deck. It's a very good deck to connect with the symbols, with keywords, with some combinations, get a sense of the directionality. Lovely. So the other cards that I wanted to see was the clouds. I wanted to see what Zenn had to say about the clouds. Let's head to the clouds. That is card, and Zenn has them in the classical order. I have them in alphabetical order because I find it easier. Here is the clouds. It's card 6, so we go by this number, not the pip card, the number here. And Zenn says that the clouds refers to bad weather, confusion, insecurity, misunderstanding, and obscurity. So this is really amazing. Timing, the monsoon months in India. Elsewhere, it would be autumn. That's the timing correspondence. Isn't this awesome? So, you know, your environment, your context inspires the way you can interpret the cards. With health, Zenn suggests lung issues, breathing issues, and mental turmoil. So these are really interesting correspondences. The advice is clarity within leads to clarity without. So definitely with the clouds, it's important to clarify confusion. And her proposed combination, clouds and bouquet, obscurity lifts, gathers, and the reverse of that, bouquet clouds, is the writer's block. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? Now, I would take this as a specific context. I think the bouquet with clouds can also suggest dampened enthusiasm in a general way, and such, you know, such ideas. But to suggest that it can mean writer's block is a way that the cards can be made very specific, assuming the context or additional cards support that. So really interesting here. The next card that I wanted to look at, I think the scythe was one of them. Let's head to the scythe. So the scythe is card 10, and so it shouldn't be too far. Here we go. Accidents, danger, and harvest, impulsive actions, and surgeries. So all of these are common associations with the scythe. This is pretty common. Personally, I never really associated the harvest with the scythe. I felt it was so different from the rest of the ideas that are associated with the scythe that I felt that the idea of reaping and sowing for me is closer to the cross, because the cross is about spiritual matters, karma, decisions, and these things. The timing is sudden or unexpected. I think we all agree on this. Health warns of injuries and danger, often surgeries or other more or less invasive procedures. We totally agree with that as well. Advice, are you cutting off or are you carving? That is interesting. That is a really interesting question. What are you doing with the scythe? That's what I'm picking up from this, Zenn. This is really interesting. Scythe and mice, danger depletes. So I would say maybe, I'm not sure what Zenn means by this, but it could suggest that the danger is not as dangerous. And then the other way around would be a sudden or unexpected loss. So again, directionality, I think sometimes is intuitive. Like, for some people, the way they see it, it might be different for others. So for example, for me, the coffin and key is one of those pairs where I pick up a directionality. And when the key is after the coffin, it suggests opening. But if the coffin is after the key, it suggests closing. Whereas other people might perceive it differently. They might suggest the reverse. So I would say that always go with your, your resonance with the cards, considering, essentially being like mainly faithful to the card meaning, but there are times and ways where you could, it's debatable. And actually Zenn does have a note at the end where she suggests that this is only a beginning, like her keywords are just a beginning, and you can move on and be inspired by your own imagination. So that was for the scythe. Let us move on to, I think, one more card, the mountain. I wanted to look at the mountain. So let me see, which one is the mountain? I like the tower. Well, let's stop at the tower, actually. I really like this card and how it's illustrated. Keywords are an office, buildings, ego. How interesting. This is the first time I come across this suggestion. I really like this, the idea of ego. There is something about the tower that is isolated, and of course this idea of elevation. So I think the ego is a really nice extension out of these ideas. Institutions and isolation, like I said, yeah. Timing, 19th day of the month. So this is another card where Zenn refers to the number on the card for timing reasons. And with the health, watch the spine, stretch and strengthen it. Often the tower is associated with the spine and the back, for obvious reasons. The advice of the card is to be disciplined and to turn talent into an ability. That is really nice. So I guess here the idea of time, the time it takes to become expert at something. She suggests the tower and ring as a combination, institution of marriage. There is a sense of official matters that are associated with the tower, so therefore marriage can be suggested. And then the ring and tower, a pact encircling the workspace, a work agreement. I don't think they're very different. I think directionality for me doesn't always come through. It depends on the cards. And here is the mountain. So 2 cards away. So here's the mountain. Like I said, very interesting green that we have on here. So the mountain is challenges, delays, hurdles, impairment, and a hilly landscape. So any card can be interpreted for any context, and you can use any card to describe a landscape. Of course, some cards are more obviously about a landscape than others, but you could still stretch cards' meanings, and that's what I call correspondences. So in terms of timing, it is delayed and distant. I think we all agree on that. In terms of health, it relates to health blockages. The mountain tends to be associated with stiffness and not being able to move. It is also associated with the head because the head is the heaviest part of the body, and obviously it's on the top. It can also, the tower can also suggest that, but it's just more amenable to suggest the spine. Now, of course, when we're looking at health and these matters, you want to be careful what you offer in terms of guidance with your cards. The advice of the card of the mountain is to persist, and the universe shall assist. Very interesting. So climbing that mountain. Her suggested combination for the mountain is mountain and mice. Again, a hurdle depletes, so I think maybe the mice are able to eat away at a hurdle. I personally don't see it this way. I think the mice add to it. Instead, I would want a bright card to suggest that the hurdle is being resolved, as it were. And then the mice and mountain, worry persists, anxiety is a burden. Yeah, definitely. So these are all some really straightforward, handy, practical, very common, I would say, keywords that we have with the cards. It's interesting that Zenn focuses on the health correspondence. It must be because of what she does. So this is worth noting, folks. When you have a specific need for the deck, you can take the deck and apply it specifically for your context. And like I was saying, There are some people in the program who are off doing some pretty amazing things with their deck. They interpret it for their specific needs, for their specific context, for the specific people they deal with. And this is what you want to do. You want to understand the deck, understand what it's about, be able to do all sorts of things with it. And then once you've mastered this, you know, you've got everything you need to stretch it and use it in the ways that you need. So very helpful. And so it sounds like Zenn's focus on health seems to be specific to her needs as a professional in this area. Like I said, she has a really interesting profile, being an educational consultant and a numerologist, as well as a Lenormand reader and trainer. So go ahead and explore how, you know, she's got all this together. It is so creative and so amazing. Okay, wonderful. So with this said, now we're going to have to shuffle the deck, and we are going to draw one spread out of Zenn's guidebook. And the spread is the her very interested take on the past, present, and future. So I'm going to go ahead and messy pile the deck, and then I'll see you in just a couple of minutes because I haven't shuffled this deck before. Okay, here we are with the shuffled deck, and I want to show you the spread that I want to do, and this one immediately stood out to me as really interesting. So this is Zenn's past, present, future layout, and I love it. I think I want to experiment with it. She has one card for the past at the bottom, 2 cards above it, and 3 cards as the future on top. So it is an inverted pyramid, and I really like that there's only 1 card for the past, 2 cards for the present, and 3 cards for the future. Typically because we know the past, and usually we don't need that much insight into the past unless there is an unresolved issue that we're trying to understand. In this case, it might make sense to just do a portrait or something bigger. But in terms of a past, present, future, we normally know what happened in the past, so we don't need that much detail in it. And for the present, there's a pair, and the future has the most cards because it is what is unknown, so the most detail would be needed here. So a lovely take on the past, present, future. So I'm going to go right ahead and do a past, present, future. I'm going to deal them off the top, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to reverse the deal. So I'm going to start with the future, and I'm going to end with the present, with the past. Okay, great. We've got the cards into view. I really like how they look on camera. I think they do really well for sharing readings with others on YouTube. I might adopt this deck, Zenn, into my collection, add variety. It can be a bit tricky with Lenormand. So here we are with the past, present, future. And it stands out to me that there's a relationship element here at play. Now, I'm not going to assume any context, but just a quick read to get a sense of the flow from past into future. So we've got the relationship element coming through the woman in the middle line into the present. And with the garden in the past, there could have been a meeting or a connection with this person, but keep in mind that the Tower is a card of going solo and being isolated, and we just read that. So obviously, after a time of having been together, there seems to be a time of isolation. And then look at the top line. In the future, there looks to be a separation. We have the whip and scythe figuring together, and the rider, which is movement. This is a very clear message of a relationship falling apart, or a break-off, as it were. It can be a good thing. It can be a challenging thing. It can depend on the person you're reading for. Perhaps they are looking to break free from a relationship. In this case, it would be relieving to them. But if they are not, then this could be a pretty challenging reading. So I really like this format for a past, present, future. And I had been toying with a pyramid kind of format layout for our weekly readings on the Forecast channel, but I haven't settled on one. I'm not sure I would do it inverted, but I think that the inverted pyramid for a past, present, future is really handy, you know, with a little detail about the past and most details about the future with a pair in the middle. So a very lovely deck, I would say, Zenn. I really appreciate the clarity of the cards, how the symbols stand out. I love that it is hand-drawn and it is so authentic in this way. And a really amazing job for pulling off the first Lenormand deck in India. It is really beautiful to see the interest growing, and that certainly makes me very happy, because it is really part of my mission to grow the Lenormand community. So folks, I'm going to link all the information about Zenn's deck in the description box. Do check out again her website and how she's got these different skills together. It might inspire you with your own practice, and how you deliver this work in the world, what you do with it for others. It is very inspiring to see what people are doing. So I really want to encourage you to look at that, especially practitioners out there. So thank you for tuning into this deck review, and Zenn, thank you so much for sending me your deck. I just might pull it into my weekly and monthly forecast. Let's see how that goes. And be sure to check out all of the resources that I have as well as other deck reviews on the forecast channel that I will also link. So thank you for tuning in, and until next time, take very good care of yourself.